Hey everyone, welcome. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We are rocking tonight on this Tuesday, October 1st, 1st of October. Guess what, y'all? We made it to the fourth quarter. This is where we win the year right here. We've made all our mistakes this year that we're going to make, and we are rocking into this last 3 months. And I hope you guys are ready for it. I hope we're ready for a great fourth quarter of the year. It's where they separate the men from the boys right here and get after it. So welcome to October. It's a great month. Great people have been born in October. That's a true statement right there. So yes, I'm having a birthday. I'll be 54. I've already changed my my screensaver, whatever you call that. And my wife, she said this morning, she's like, "What do you have on your screensaver?" I don't know if you guys could see that right there, but I got Zach Thomas right there on my screensaver on my phone. I got him right there at number 54. So this is going to be a Hall of Fame year. I can feel it coming right now. So I just had to get him. I think this next 3 years, I got Zach Thomas and Junior Seau and Lawrence Taylor all back to back right here. So these are 3 Hall of Fame years we're fixing to get into right here. I can't wait. All you guys in your 30s, if you're wondering if it gets better if you get older, it does. If all you guys in your 40s, if you're wondering if it gets better when you get older, it does. So absolutely, we're ready for this. It's coming up. 26th is my birthday, and I can't wait. And we're going to just rock this next year. So, yeah, October, good times, good football, good weather. We got some pumpkins on the porches. Everybody is just feeling this fall, and we're getting after it. Hey, if you didn't watch the show last night, it ended up being pretty good. Took me a while to kind of get in the rhythm of it, but by the time we got around to the end of it, we kind of tied it all together, and we took health to church, and I think it was pretty good. I think it ended up kind of explaining why we want to take care of our brain, why we want to take care of our health, why we want to try to reach maturity in the things that we do. And so, if you didn't get a chance to catch it last night, go back and watch that show. I think you might enjoy it. So tonight we're going to dedicate this entire week to food. My main man JT has been asking me. He asked me a couple weeks ago, "Hey Doc, how do you eat? What are you supposed to eat?" And what a thing to answer, right? But if you're going to talk about wellness, you got to be able to talk about food. So that's what we're going to do for this entire week. So I thought I would take tonight and just start with the fundamentals of the whole thing. Yeah, thank you, JT. Appreciate you. Thanks for listening. And thanks for listening to last night's show. Yeah, you said great show last night. I appreciate that. So we're going to spend these next 4 nights of this week. We're going to spend these next 4 nights talking about food, and we'll come up with anything. So first off, if you have any recipes that you like, if you have any comments about food, if you have any questions about food that you would like to discuss, send it to us. If you've got a favorite recipe that you feel like is a healthy recipe that you want to share with us, if you have a recipe for pumpkin pie or something that would fit in wellness, if it's got sugar in it, it doesn't work, right? We're not going for that. But if you've got a way to make something healthy, if you've got healthy snacks, if you've got something that you do for your kids and or whatever. I know a lot of you guys are older that listen to the show, and you got a lot of you guys are the ones that got lied to, right? You're the generation like my parents. They're the generation that got lied to. That 1970s. I was born in 1970. It's like the they were in their mid 20s. They were in their mid 20s, mid to late 20s in 1970, and so here comes high fructose corn syrup. Here comes McDonald's. Here comes the Pizza Huts and the instant stuff and the microwaves and all that stuff, right? And then now what we're seeing is death early. All 3 of my uncles died earlier than my grandpa did. My grandpa lived to be 84, and his first three sons all died before they got there. 80 is as far as they could get. And so my grandpa was in his mid-20s back in the 40s, right? So there was a different time that we had. So if you guys are older, you may be stuck in it, but I can promise you, you're probably dealing with some things that have to do with food. You're probably dealing with the results of long-term processed food ingestion that are, your Alzheimer's and your Parkinson's and your cancer and your prostate cancer and your diabetes and all that stuff right there, are all things that you may be dealing with. So if you still have capacity, if you're older and you still have capacity, might be a great idea to change your ways quickly. And it might be an idea to take some of this to heart. So if you got something, share it with me. I would love for you to share it. I'll share it on the radio, or you can tell me don't if you don't want me to. But let's get into the fundamentals. And for you guys that have watched the show for a while, and you started with us in the very beginning, all you OGers out there, you've heard this before, and you've seen these slides if you're social media people. And if you guys are on the radio at 98.7 or streaming at 987radio.com, or all of you 1420 AM people out there, if you want to go back later on and go to the Walk by Faith Facebook page, you can do that. If you want to come to the Rock Health and Wellness Center Facebook page, you can do that. And you can check some of what we're going to talk about tonight. I'll try to keep it verbal, but we're also going to have visual for the ones that are on social media. But it's worth telling the story every single time we talk about food, because I was early in my career. I got my license in February of 2005, and I'm almost finished with 20 years. Makes me remember that. Yeah, but I had a gentleman that was a banker that came to me, and he was a guy that ran 5 miles 3 times a week for 40 years or something like that. He was a very fit human being. He was a very proper person. His shirt was tucked in. His pants, his jeans were creased and pleated and dry cleaned, and he was just exactly what you would think a banker would be. He was like where he knew where all the pennies were kind of guy. You know what I mean? Just like straight laced kind of guy. And he came to me, and he had cancer all over his spine. He didn't have any extra body weight. He was very fit. He was a very thin man, and his whole spine was eaten up with cancer. And he asked me. He said, "Jason, why did this happen to me?" And I said, "I don't know." I thought, because at that point in my career, he was the epitome of what you should be when you retire. He was thin, he was fit, he had exercised, he did all the things that you would think you were supposed to do and then retire. And I don't even think he made it to 70. I think he retired, and within a couple of years, he died. And so when he asked me that question, it started me on a journey. And so when we talk about food, and you guys have heard this before, but I know there's some new people that are watching our show, and we got some new followers that watch our show. And you guys that have heard it before, just hear it again, because sometimes the third and fourth and fifth time that you hear it, it's just like, oh, I see what he's talking about now. Or maybe something that's going on in your life right now will reveal to you something that's a little bit different when you hear it again. But the thing that I would have done is I would have used him as the model. And that's not what you want to. You don't want to end up with cancer all over your spine and die, and before you hit 70 years old, right? So that's not the model. But who knew what it was? So on this journey, when we start talking about food, let me tell you, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and everybody has an opinion on food. The pastor this weekend, in the middle of the blessing avalanche, he said, "You know what I got on my mind right now is a Coke and a Dion's pizza." He's like, "No, I'm not going to eat healthy today. I eat healthy Monday through Saturday. That's not what today is for. I just got it on my mind, and I'm just going to go." And he's a real fit guy, But it was just like, I couldn't believe he said that. It's just like, I was thinking to myself, what I was thinking to myself is like, man, I wish that I could just, like, why is, I don't wish this, but I don't wish this, but why is it that I can't have a girlfriend just once a week? Like, you think Leslie would go for that? Like if I said, hey, Les, look, I'm going to love you. I'm going to love you Monday through Saturday, but on Sunday, come on, just once a week, just once a month. I'm just going to have a girlfriend once a month. Some of you guys have been through that in your life. Some of you guys have been through it in your life, and you know how it tears down your relationships to do something like that, right? We don't. What if I just wanted to drive 130 miles an hour down Milwaukee just once a month? Just because, sometimes I just like to get in that Leslie's Jaguar, and I just like to fly down. Man, it'd just be so fun to just drive that fast. Absolutely not, right? They would throw me in jail if they caught me with that. But we argue about food, and we argue about how it works and what it does and what it doesn't do and all this sort of thing. And to me, it's a third world issue. What do we call third order issue? I'm not going to break up with you. I don't care. Like, I do care, but I'm not going to break up with you over food. You can eat whatever the heck you want to eat. You can drink whatever you want to drink. You can feed your kids whatever you want to feed your kids, whatever. Okay? So we're not going to fight about food. I'm just going to try to show you what physiologically happens inside our body when we eat certain things. What is going on with the biology of food? What is happening inside the body when we choose to do certain things with our food? And then what are the consequences of that? That's what I want to talk to you. And once you know the consequences of drinking soda pop, then drink it if you want. Once you know the consequences of drinking alcohol, drink it if you want. But maybe sometimes you don't really realize the consequences of those things. And then maybe sometimes you're not focused enough to know the consequences of those things. And so that's what, as we move through the week and we get through all this food stuff, I just think, just know that I'm not fighting with you about food. I'm just sharing with you information about, I don't think there's an expert on the planet about what every single bite a person takes. I don't think there's an expert that can break any of that stuff down. There's people that can tell you about the physiology of it all. But if you go to the Blue Zones on Netflix, Living to 100, go watch what those people eat, how they eat, what they do, how they exercise. Go watch those people in Okinawa. It's been that they've been the same since the beginning of time. Okay, so this is our Power of Food class. I started it in 2009, right after that man came into my office, because it was sickening to have a person ask you a question and you have no idea what to tell them. Like it's really, really disheartening as a doctor when someone says, Jason, why did this happen to me? And you're like, I don't know. You're the one that should have been the model. And it was disgusting. So I started studying it. I just started studying the power of food. And the first thing that starts off is everybody thinks that skinny people are healthy and fat people are not healthy. Everybody thinks the same thing. Skinny people are healthy. Little people are healthy. Like, and I just picked out some people back in 2009. I just picked out some people. This is Patrick Swayze. For you guys on the radio, there's a picture of him with his shirt off. He's got a ripped six-pack abs. He was one of the most yoga-doing, fitness dudes on the planet. And he died at the age of 57 with pancreas cancer, I believe. And it's sad. I'm not throwing stones at Patrick Swayze. I'm just pointing out that skinny doesn't make us healthy. Farrah Fawcett was another one. She was my girlfriend when I was young, right? It's like, whoo, man, look how skinny she was. 62 years old from colon cancer. Heath Ledger, here's another one, 28 years old, skin and bones. skin and bones, skinny dude, right there, age of 28, killed himself with drugs. So you could go through there, right? But we're not supposed to die from chronic disease. We're not supposed to even develop chronic disease. There's not a single study ever published to validate that concept, according to Dr. James Chestnut. There's not, we are genetically designed to express health. Put the cell in the environment. That's what the pastor said this weekend. He said, I can't understand how wheat, you can buy wheat that's been in a bag for 100 years. I don't know where you get it, but you can buy wheat that's been in a bag for 50 years. It's been in a bag, or a seed of some kind. You can get a cotton seed that's just been sitting in a bag for I don't know how long. And then all of a sudden, you could take that seed and put it in the ground, put water on it, put some dirt around it, put some sunshine on it, and all of a sudden the seed just starts to grow, right? You put the seed in an environment that's congruent with health, and what do? You get the expression, the innate intelligence of the seed will express itself when it's in an environment that's congruent with health. So all available research indicates, according to Dr. Chestnut, that humans are innately genetically programmed for homeostasis and health. I had a patient say it today when I was telling her this story about this man, and she said, "Oh, genetics." And I'm like, "No, environment, not genetics. We're not supposed to get heart disease. We're not supposed to get cancer. We're not supposed to get diabetes. We've accepted it. We've accepted it that it's part of the deal. As soon as something goes wrong, we just accept it and we say, okay, well, I got diabetes. It runs in my family. Oh, I got the arthritis. It runs in my family, right? No. That's not the way it goes. Heart disease, cancer, unintentional injuries is the only one of the top 10 degree, 7 of the top 10 chronic diseases, slow down, 7 of the top 10 causes of death are chronic disease. Heart disease, cancer, chronic lower respiratory disease, your stroke, I'm going to say that has something to do with it too. Alzheimer's, diabetes, influenza, kidney disease, suicide. So you got suicide and unintentional injuries are in that top 10, but the rest of them, they're all chronic diseases that are killing people. A very prominent report by these two guys, Sir Richard Dole and Sir Richard Peto of the University of Oxford, submitted to the U.S. Congress, summarized that many of these studies and concluded that only 2 to 3% of all cancers could be attributed to genes. It's not, I don't even know if that's true. But, and then I have on my notes right here, the China study, page 85. I don't have it with me. I'll try to grab it for tomorrow and see exactly what the China study says. But it gets us into this understanding of what is happening inside our body whenever things are going wrong, right? So we have a toxicity or a deficiency. There's 2 reasons. I heard this in chiropractic school. There's 2 reasons a person gets sick. They have too much or too little of something. You have too much or too little of something. You can have too much water and you can drown. You can have too little water and you can be dehydrated. You have too much or too little of something, right? You can have too much fish oil, I guess. Never met anybody or read anybody or heard of anybody on the planet that too much of it. I guess if you drowned in fish oil, if you had swimming pool full of fish oil and you fell in it and drowned, then that wouldn't be good. But you can have too much or too little, right? So anything that creates toxicity or deficiency in relation to the genetic environmental requirements causes the body to enter the stress response. So this is very important. The stress response has 5 phases. The first thing that happens is you get an alarm. Your body is trying to tell you something. There's an alarm going off right there. Something is happening. Your body is trying to respond to your environment. And then the second thing is it's trying to adapt. So you'll get the alarm. You'll get the alarm, and then all of a sudden you'll try to adapt to the alarm. How do you adapt? Now you start to go into, that's where went back with Bruce Lipton, right? We went back and we talked about proteins on the cell wall, proteins as receptors on the cell wall, proteins on the nucleus, the proteins that wrap the DNA, all of those proteins, all of those things responding to the environment. We talked about the adaptation, going back to the genetic code and trying to figure out, how do we adapt to this? What is the alarm? The alarm may be aspartame. The alarm may be saccharin. The alarm may be processed flour. The alarm may be high fructose corn syrup. Those are the alarms that we're talking about when we're talking about food. Because so when you ingest high fructose corn syrup, your body's like, okay, how are we supposed to break this down? What is it we're supposed to do? And then it tries to adapt to the ingestion of the high fructose corn syrup. It's either going to or it's not. Now, if it's not in your genetic code, you're going to have a hard time adapting to it. If you've got something like aspartame and it's going to fire up your neurology, that's not good. Your body's going to have a hard time adapting. So if it can't adapt, then it will fatigue. You'll start to get tired. And I don't know how many people I have that tell me, Doc, I'm tired all the time. I'm tired all the time. I'm tired in the afternoon. I can't keep my eyes open. I'm tired at 2 o'clock. I wake up in the morning and I'm tired. I'm just tired all the time. Well, what does it mean to me when someone says that? What it means to me is that they have put themselves in an environment that's incongruent with health. They have created an alarm for themselves that their body is trying to adapt to, but it can't adapt to it. So it's creating fatigue. It's creating fatigue, and you're getting tired. And the next thing that's going to happen is that you're going to get sick. Well, what's sick mean? Chronic disease. I'm going to get diabetes. I'm going to get cancer. I'm going to get Alzheimer's. I'm going to get Parkinson's. I'm going to get COPD. I'm going to create some sort of illness because I've put myself in an environment that I can't adapt to. Right? So I go from alarm to adapt, can't adapt, maladaptation, non-adaptation, adapted physiology. Non-adapted physiology is pathology. That's sickness. That's what it means. It's not your innate intelligence. See, this is why I talk about innate intelligence so much, because if you don't have innate intelligence, then you just fall for the idea that it's genetics. If you don't understand innate intelligence, then you just say, well, my daddy had the same thing and my granddaddy had the same thing. So I don't understand why it's happening to me. I guess it's just genetics. But if you think about innate intelligence, that spirit of God that we were talking about that runs our body, that's in all and through all, and that thing, right? That spirit that runs our body is trying to adapt to an environment that's incongruent with health. And now we're getting sick. And now we're going to get some sort of diagnosis. And then the diagnosis is, if it lasts long enough, will end up in death. So those are the 5 stages of the stress response: alarm, adapt, fatigue, illness, and death. Right? We can't adapt to an environment that's incongruent with our code. We can't when we add something to it, then the body has a really hard time adapting to it. Right? So why do we eat? Well, why should we eat? People always say that. It's like, well, why do we eat? Well, it's breakfast time. It's lunchtime. Hey, y'all, it's lunchtime. Let's go eat. Does anybody say, well, are you hungry? No. It's like, no, it's time to eat. Hey, we're getting together tonight and we're all going out to dinner. We're going to be social. Hey, what are we having for the once a month? It's October. We're coming up on the first Sunday of the month. How many people have a Sunday school breakfast first Sunday of the month? Let's bring something to eat. We do that all the time, right? We don't think about food as fuel. Remember, we talk about fuel and activation. We don't think of food as fuel. We just think, hey, it's time to eat. I should eat something. We just probably ought to eat, right? The reason we eat is to get essential nutrients into our bodies that we need to function. That's what we're supposed to do with eating. That's what we're supposed to do with drinking. I mean, otherwise we would starve to death, right? So, um, starve means to die or perish from lack of food or nourishment. That's why we're supposed to eat, right? And it's not that complicated. I mean, everybody on the planet understands that. You got to eat when you're hungry, but sometimes we don't. Sometimes we eat when we're social. Sometimes we eat on the clock, is my point. And that doesn't necessarily lead us into health and wellness. That's what Dr. Bredesen says, right? Sometimes you got to push that fast a little bit further down the road so that you can get into autophagy, so that you can clean up your brain. Food can either help us be healthier or it can make us sicker. And it's pretty much every bite that's either moving us that direction. We're either moving towards health or we're moving away from health. Now, we may have a long way to go before we get to illness, and we can afford to have a Coke and a candy bar, but and a pizza. But eventually, it's definitely not moving us towards health. All right, we got to take a break. You guys stick with us. We'll be right back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, and we'll be right back right after these messages. You guys stick around. You know, since, 2009, this is 15 years now that we've been doing this particular class. It's 15 years that I've been thinking about this thing, and I've had plenty of time. I've had plenty of time to present this multiple times, and then work through it and think about it and analyze it, and it's like, because it's like, so sometimes when you're swimming up against the stream, sometimes swimming against the stream is exhausting. It's exhausting because people don't listen to you and people don't care, which is not my deal. It's not my responsibility to feed you. It's your responsibility to feed yourself. And half of my life, I haven't even cared either. More than half my life, I haven't even cared. So it's not like I have some sort of positional authority on this deal. Like I'm blameless. I'm not Jesus when it comes to food. Like it's one of those things that, like, look. And then you got people that drink alcohol and live to be 97 years old. You got people that don't eat and live to be 80. And then you got people that eat relatively healthy and die from a brain tumor. Like, that's how do you reconcile those things? I can't. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to reconcile those things. I don't know how to make those things. I don't have the answers to that. I don't know that. So it makes this food thing complicated. Some people eat very small portions. Some people control their sugar. Some people don't mind their alcohol. It's like they can handle all that stuff, and their body functions as good as anybody else's function. But if we were going to start somewhere, it's like coaching football. You got to draw the play up properly. I mean, you got to draw the play up, and then if you got an athlete, then he just takes over. It's like, well, we drew it up like this, but except he didn't run it like that. He ran it his own way, but he's such a good athlete, he could just do that and overcome the whole thing. Well, okay, fine. If you're going to score a touchdown or make the tackle, do it your way, but just don't not make the tackle. That's the thing. If you're not going to make the tackle, then you're going to force us into trying to figure out a different way, and that's kind of with food. So it's either making us healthy or it's making us sick. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We're starting the week of food right here. So we're talking about the fundamentals of health. We're talking about the power of food. That's our class that we've taught forever. And we're on the slide of food can either make us healthier or it can make us sicker. Either way. So what is food, right? And we broke this down just recently when we broke down carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. That's the big thing. Those are the things that we want to talk about. Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. That's 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 what we're talking about. Okay, carbohydrates. And you guys know this because we just recently went over it. But if you're new to the show, I'm going to do it one more time. And just, it's what happens is a plant takes carbon dioxide from a plant, takes carbon dioxide from the air. And carbon dioxide is CO2, carbon and two oxygens. So it takes that molecule of carbon dioxide and it says, hey, look, I just need the carbon. I don't need the oxygen. When you breathe in oxygen. When you breathe out carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a gas, right? It's out here in front of us. And what a plant does is it takes that carbon dioxide, it chops that carbon off of there, and then it hydrates it. It adds water, H2O. It adds H2O to a carbon, and you get an H and another H and an O. And there's your carbohydrate. It's pretty simple. It's a hydrated carbon. It's a carbon with water on it. Your cells turn carbohydrates into energy so we can function with them, right? They're used for structures such as DNA, for the proper burning of fat, to eliminate toxins, to excess cholesterol and excess cholesterol from the body, and are vital for growth of beneficial bacteria that live in our intestines. There are some people who are completely anti-carb. There are some people who talk about carbs as if they're the devil. I just try to look at the global population, and I try to look at the people that live the longest. And the people that live the longest, and the people that there's an assumption, and on my part, and I think this is a fair assumption, that if you're the longest living people on the planet, you most likely are not dying from disease early. I don't think you're getting a lot of chronic disease. If you're in Okinawa, I don't think they get it, and I haven't looked it up, but I'm just kind of making an assumption here. I don't think you get chronic disease. You don't get heart disease and cancer and diabetes and all those things when you're in your 50s and 60s if you're living to be 100. I'm going to assume that there is a quality of life that goes along with living to being 100 in Okinawa. There's an ability to keep going and do the things that you want to do. So it's not just about living the longest. It's about having a quality of life while you're here. And having a quality of life, as we talked about yesterday, and becoming mature. Like to reach the fullness, right? That's what we're trying to do. So I don't see the evidence. I don't see the evidence that a carb-free life is necessary. I don't see the evidence that it's actually great. I hear people talk about it. One of my favorite people, Jordan Peterson, talks about the carnivore diet all the time. Like carbs aren't necessary. I'm not saying that you can't live on them because your body's going to turn in your carbohydrates. If you don't, that's what the keto diet is. You're going to turn you got to have some fuel somewhere. Your brain needs glucose, oxygen, and excitability. You've got to have fuel and activation. You've got to have some sort of way to get that whole Krebs cycle and the ATP made from the mitochondria. You got to get all that stuff done in one form or fashion. And one way you can do it is through carbohydrates. Now, the question becomes, what kind of carbohydrates should we eat? There's different, and I'm gonna go ahead and skip to it, and then I'll come back to those slides in just a second. But there's a difference between the simple carbohydrates and the complex carbohydrates. The simple carbohydrates are very quickly digested and go right into the body, in the bloodstream very quickly. They're the simple ones, and they call them monosaccharides or disaccharides: glucose, fructose, galactose. And if you put glucose and fructose together, Then you get sucrose, not sucralose, but sucrose, and that's table sugar. Glucose, galactose is lactose, and that's milk sugar. Glucose and glucose is maltose, and that's malt sugar. Those are simple. There's either one carbohydrate or there are two of them put together to make a disaccharide. But the glucose, fructose, and galactose, they're just very simple molecules to break down. They're going to go into your digestive tract, and they're going to go right into your bloodstream, and they're going to go in volume. So when you eat a piece of white bread, when you eat a white potato, when you eat a Snickers bar, a banana, like when you eat something that is refined carbohydrate, a donut, any of those things that are refined, that you've taken the carbohydrate and you've done something to it. You've or in nature, those ones that are usually white. They talk about white things: white rice, white potato, white bananas. The white things in nature are the ones that tend to break down faster. They're the simplest, and they get right into your bloodstream quickly. They're going to create the physiology quickly and in volume. And that's the problem. It's quick, the time frame and the volume, because it's all quick. A complex carbohydrate is a polysaccharide. So now you're going to get a bunch of those things put together: your fiber, your glycogen, your dextrin, your starches, okay? Complex carbohydrates have to be broken down into the monosaccharides and the disaccharides, which take time. This causes blood sugar to rise more slowly and decrease insulin resistance or release. The cells become energized and the body is happy. Refining complex carbs removes most of the fiber and many essential nutrients. When you start playing chemistry with the food and you start creating all those refined carbohydrates, then you change the way the body responds to the carbohydrate because it's not natural. And then when you get into into some of those other things that like the white potatoes and the bananas, those are natural, but they're not. So because people say, well, it's natural, it's organic. Well, that everything that's natural and organic is not good for you. Cow manure is not good for you to eat. You shouldn't live on it. You shouldn't just live on cow manure, right? It's natural, but it's not necessarily something that you would think we should have for supper, right? Cockroaches are not, they're natural, but in America, we're not going to have cockroaches. If you were eating cockroaches, come by the house or come by the office and I'll give you some money and I'll take you to lunch. You're freaking starving if you're eating cockroaches, right? Just because they're natural doesn't mean there's something that we ought to eat. So there's some things in nature that are poisonous. There's some things in nature like poinsettias, right? Poinsettias, like you got to watch out with poinsettias because they're poisonous to little kids. Just chew them up. That's not good, right? So what we want is we want complex carbohydrates. Where do we get complex carbohydrates? We get them from vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. Now there's one of the things right there: whole grains. How you handle that whole grain, what you spray on that whole grain, it gets complicated. But that's what we want. We want vegetables. We want asparagus. We want broccoli. We want cauliflower. We want even zucchini and squash if you're not talking about Gundry stuff. Those are common things. Okra is really good. Sweet potatoes, purple potatoes, those things are better, right? Complex carbohydrates, slow insulin release. That's what we're looking for. Now let me go back just a bit, because when we get into proteins, there's structures made from building blocks we call amino acids. The body uses proteins for building muscle, bone, skin, hormones, enzymes, antibodies, and more. It is also used proteins to maintain fluid balance, pH levels, and make neurotransmitters. Our bodies utilize 22 amino acids. 8 are considered to be essential for most adults. They must come from the diet. We got to get them from the diet. We can't make them. Okay? So proteins are super important. And we know from past shows that proteins are super important because they're on cell walls and they're how we adapt to our environment. Those are all those receptors. They're made out of proteins. Those receptors on the cell wall made out of proteins. Those receptors on the nucleus made out of proteins. Those receptors on the DNA made out of proteins. We unzip, we make the RNA. What does the RNA do? It makes proteins and other things. And then there we go. Proteins are important. Where do you get those? We'll talk about in just a second. And then there's fats. Fats are made up of building blocks called fatty acids. And there's a couple different kinds: linoleic acid, omega-6 fatty acids, and alpha linolenic acid, which is an omega-3 fatty acid. And there's other ones, okay? Those are considered essential, which means we must eat them. Then we get into saturated fats. That means that the fat is saturated with hydrogen, which is complicated. It doesn't necessarily mean anything other than it's saturated. The fat is very stable, normally solid at room temperature and body temperature, and does not react well with oxygen. Unsaturated fats, fatty acids that has one or more double bonds. Double bonds are unstable. Heat, light, and oxygen can easily damage unsaturated fats. That's why there's your difference between like your olive oil, your coconut oil, your vegetable oil. Heat, light, and oxygen is going to destroy olive oil slower than it is going to do corn oil, which is mostly what you get when you get vegetable oil. So if you add heat, light, or oxygen, it doesn't mean that you won't destroy olive oil. If you cook olive oil at high temperatures for a very long period of time, you'll turn olive oil into a bad oil. But if you turn the temperature down and you just saute your vegetables in your olive oil, and you do that at a relatively low temperature, the olive oil can withstand the temperature better than the corn oil can, or your vegetable oil, which is going to make it less likely to be damaged by the heat, the light, and the oxygen. That's why most of your olive oil is in a dark container in the refrigerator. I mean, in the aisles at the grocery store. It's in a dark bottle to try to keep the light from the grocery store off of the oil. Okay, so the heat, light, and oxygen can easily damage unsaturated fats. That's the French fry. You guys listening to the Food Babe do her talk? And I didn't. It's not a sexist statement. The Food Babe. I was just listening to her. You can look her up. I'm not going to get into it, but she does a lot of nutrition stuff. She just presented to some government committee here this last week and about French fries. And French fries in the United States versus French fries in Europe at McDonald's French fries. How many added ingredients that McDonald's French fries has versus the ones in Europe. And Skittles in America and in other places. And Gatorade in America and in Europe. She's like, look, it's not the same. It's not the same food because our people put a bunch of chemicals in our food. Chemicals that we can't adapt to. Chemicals that make us ill, that make us tired, and that make us ill, right? So, but French fries is a white potato that's cooked in vegetable oil, corn oil, which is heated up, and then you bring that basket up and down, up and down, up and down out of that oil, which you just keep adding oxygen to that oil every time you add that, bring that basket up and down, and then you put the French fry underneath the heat lamp. And then you got the heat, the light, the oxygen, and then you're eating a highly simple carbohydrate, which goes straight into your bloodstream. So the French fry is a bad deal. Okay, we've been told to eat a balanced diet in moderation in order to be healthy. So what does that mean? Because the way that I understand moderation is not the same way that everyone else understands moderation. Just a one Coke and a Dion's on a Sunday is moderation. Not in my life. Not anymore. It's not. One girlfriend a month is not moderation. It's not allowed. Can't drive one day a month driving 130 down Milwaukee is not moderation. Don't ever do it, ever. Don't do that. So when you say, "Oh, well, I eat a balanced diet in moderation," then I think we should define it. What does it mean? What are we talking about? So, two nutritional causes of chronic stress that I like to focus on. And if when we do our shop with the doc, and you guys that have done the shop with the doc with me, you know this, but in the shop with the doc is a grocery store visit, and we will sit down in the coffee shop in the grocery store, and we'll have a conversation about these two things. We'll have a conversation about omega-6-3 balance, and we'll have a conversation about insulin resistance. And then we'll just walk around the grocery store and we'll just talk about the foods that are dealing with the 6-3 imbalance or insulin resistance. So these are two things that I like to talk about: simple and carbohydrates and insulin resistance. So glucose is blood sugar. Anytime you add sugar to something, you make it sticky and thick. If you add any sugar to something, you're going to make it sticky. You spilled your Coke all over the countertop. You spilled your Kool-Aid all over the countertop. Whatever it was, you're going to make it thick and sticky, right? Your body needs the glucose in order to function. Whenever you have an excess amount of glucose, your pancreas releases insulin, and that insulin is helping get rid of that sugar. The insulin is for growth and repair. It's a growth and repair hormone, but it's also helping us get rid of that sugar. Okay, we want to control that. So you've got a resting blood sugar, and I just went and got my blood work done on Saturday, so I'm looking forward. Probably by tomorrow, I'll have my results for my blood sugar, and I'll learn what my glucose was. Last time I checked it, I think it was 97 or 99 or something like that. And that was still a little bit higher than I thought it would be, but that's where it was. So you have a resting glucose of somewhere around 100. Now, some people have a resting glucose of 180, and some people have a resting glucose of 200. That's not good, right? That's too much sugar in your blood. It makes it very hard for your heart to pump that thick, sticky blood. It clogs up your little arteries that are farthest away from your heart. It causes all kinds of, like, the lack of oxygen getting to your tissues. That's what happens when you increase your blood sugar. So you've got a resting blood sugar of 100. You eat food especially food that is refined carbohydrates. And that's why I love our guy, Justin Richards, at Insulin Resistant One on Instagram, because he just shows you. He does the little monitor. He eats something. He says, it's been a couple hours since I ate it. See what it does to my blood sugar. And he just goes through all of the different things. And he just shows us, look, when you eat a piece of white bread, you spike your blood sugar. When you eat a banana, you spike your blood sugar. When you eat a Snickers bar, you spike your blood sugar. When you spike your blood sugar, and that means that blood sugar is going up. When the blood sugar goes up, it's going to go through the pancreas at a high level, probably somewhere around 180 or 200 or whatever. So it's going up here. It goes through the pancreas. That's going to set off an alarm. That's going to tell the pancreas, hey, look, it's too much. There's too much sugar in the blood. We got to release the insulin. We got to get the sugar down. So the pancreas will release the insulin, and now the insulin will dock with the receptor, and this is where we get into it right here. So now we've got the insulin receptor, the protein, remember, the protein on the cell wall. This cell wall, we've got a wall, we've got a receptor on that wall, and the receptor is like the gate that opens up the glucose. It's like the key that opens up the glucose gate. And so there's two mechanisms that are going on right here. The receptor docks with the insulin, or the insulin docks with the receptor. It creates a mechanism inside the cell that opens the glucose gate and allows us to suck that glucose out of the bloodstream and get it into the cell and save it for later. in the form of what's called glycogen. So it's going to save it for later. This right here, this little mechanism is delicate. It's delicate because in nature, you don't have a lot of sugar. In nature, you're not going to get a lot of sugar all day long. So it's a delicate little system. If you had a delicate anything, like the way that I handle my laptop computer, right? My laptop computer is delicate. I mean, it's to a certain extent. I mean, I'm just not going to just chunk it in the back of the truck and just take off. Right? It's like, no, I'll break the thing. We try to take care of our phones, right? We don't want to drop our phones. We like, look, you better take care of that. All this equipment and stuff up here, I don't need to just just chunk it off the table when I'm done with it. It's like we would take care of it. Well, that same thing goes on with that cell. That receptor it's a little bit delicate right there. So if we wake up in the morning and we have a Pop-Tart, and we hit that receptor and we open that gate, and then we get to work, and then we have a cracker and we hit the receptor and we open the gate, and then it's time for lunch and we're just going to run across the street, get a piece of pizza and hit the receptor and open the gate, and then we're in the middle of the afternoon, we're going to have a Dr. Pepper and we're going to hit the receptor and we're going to open the gate, then we're going to get home and have some enchiladas and hit the receptor and open the gate, and before we go to bed we're going to have some Bluebell and we're going to hit the receptor and open the gate, right? You guys have heard that story before. It's irritating. It's irritating to tell it. It's irritating to listen to it, especially if you've listened to it more than once. That's what happens. That's what we're doing to that cell. If we're constantly ingesting, if we're constantly eating refined carbohydrates all day long, every day, all day long, every day, we are mistreating that cell. And what will happen is that cell, one of the things that cell will do is it will try to adapt because it's got an alarm. It can't handle that kind of pressure all day long. So it's going to try to adapt. And what is it going to do to adapt? It's going to reach up there and it's going to pull that protein off of that cell wall. It's going to take that insulin receptor off of the wall. And when it takes the insulin receptor off of the cell wall, how are you going to open the glucose gate? You got a serious problem. And I use the example all the time of the handicap button at Kohl's or Dillard's, where you hit the button and you open the door. But if you jack with that button enough times and you break that button, what will happen? You're not going to be able to open the door. What's going to happen when that blood goes through that pancreas again? It went through the pancreas once at 200. The pancreas released the insulin. The blood flowed all the way through the body and right back around to the pancreas, and it's still at 200. What is that pancreas going to do? It's going to freak out. It's going to be like, oh my gosh, I've already sent insulin. Send more insulin. And now we're going to get more insulin thrown into the bloodstream, and we're going to have half as many receptors on the cell wall. So we've got twice as much insulin, but half as many receptors. And so what's going to happen? We're in trouble. We're in trouble. We are now becoming insulin resistant. You can throw as much insulin at us as you want, and now we can't respond to it. We can't get the glucose out of the bloodstream. We can't get that thick, sticky blood out of that bloodstream. So we got it. That's bad. That our heart's got to pump thick, sticky blood. That's super bad for our heart. It's hard to pump against all that pressure. Now we're going to clog up all those blood vessels, and we're not going to get oxygen to the tissue. And the further we go away from the heart, the smaller the blood vessels get. And now what you're going to get down in your feet is you're going to get neuropathy, right? That's insulin resistance. It's one of the key factors of what are we going to eat for lunch? Are you going to eat refined carbohydrates, or are you going to eat complex carbohydrates? Or are you going to not eat anything? That's an option too. Those are things. What are we going to have for breakfast? This morning for breakfast, I had my normal. I had my scrambled eggs, a couple pieces of sausage, my raspberries, which are very low on the glycemic index. They're very low on sugar. They almost have no, and when you eat them with the protein and the fat and a handful of pistachios, that was breakfast this morning. Tonight we're having almond-crusted Parmesan chicken with some green beans. It's going to be freaking delicious. I'll probably get Leslie to give us the recipe on that. It is so delicious, but there's not going to be any refined carbohydrates in it. There's going to be some fats. There's going to be some proteins. There's not going to be any refined carbohydrates in it. There's going to be some vegetables that are complex carbohydrates. Why? Because I'm trying to control my insulin. I don't want my insulin going up and down like that. It causes problems for us. Hey, we're going to stop it right here. I appreciate you guys. We're going to be talking about food all week long. I hope you guys will stick around and join us all week long for food. And if you have questions or comments, send them to us. We'll keep working through it. And thanks for listening. I hope this is helping. For you guys that have heard it 4 times already, stick with it. It'll be fun. So you guys have a great night. We'll talk to you tomorrow.